Hello to my Liberty kitty cats out there. Happy Thursday, and you may be thinking to yourself, what is this? Why is there a show in my Lions of Liberty feed on a Thursday? Hopefully it's a pleasant surprise, but we do have a little something here for you. We have a regular show on our Patreon for the Lions of Liberty Pride called Conspiracy Corner. We recently did a deep dive on the coronavirus. When I say we, I was not on the show, so it's really not we. It was Howie, of course, the godfather of Lions of Liberty, the man who first turned me on to Ron Paul and the ideas of libertarianism, along with our own doctor of science, J.B. Lubin, and our legal man of mystery, Rico. These are three guys who have been great contributors to the show over the years. Three of the less heralded hosts, you might say. I will promote them to the title of host after this one, since I was not present. Howie, I think, did a superb job hosting his very first show, and we decided to make this public. Actually, I was inspired by our friend Chris Bangle of We Are Libertarians. He had posted that listening to this Conspiracy Corner was actually the best information on coronavirus he had heard. So I figured, hey, if the exalted one, Mr. Spangle, thinks this, maybe the rest of the world will as well. So I'm deciding to release this to the feed. These three, as far as I'm concerned, are some of the best non-expert experts on coronavirus out there. Howie is absolutely obsessed with it. He's tracking this thing every single day. Rico has a very special connection to China and to this virus, as you'll hear. Well, maybe not to the virus, to China, though, as you'll hear throughout the show. And JB is an actual scientist, so it's great to have his perspective from the actual scientific view, which we rarely get from us boobobs over here. And the last thing that I will say before I toss to Howie Snowden is that if you enjoy this program, if you enjoy content like this, you're going to want to head over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to all of our bonus audio content. You can even dip your toe in the water for $2 a month and just access some of our live streams and our secret Facebook group. But I am quite confident that anybody who tries the Pride and dips their toe into our bonus content is going to absolutely love it. We often are told that we provide some of the best bonus content out there and the most bonus content out there. We really go out of our way to make sure that our patrons, the people that support the show, allow us to do things like go to the Libertarian National Convention this summer, allow us to buy the equipment we need for interviews on the go, to do video stuff like we recently did. By the way, check out our video that I just posted this week with me and Brian going to the Libertarian Party of California State Convention. It's a little snippet of some of our highlights of our talks there and our experience at the convention. So I'll post a link to that somewhere. It's currently on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. So please check that out. And with that said, I toss you to the Conspiracy Corner crew minus me. Enjoy.
Do you need to think of a clever intro?
Yeah, fuck it. Let's just go.
And we're live!
Hey, Liberty Lions Conspiracy Kitties. We are here today to talk to you. I am Howie Snowden. Apparently, our dear leader, Marc Claire, pretty sure he's dead of coronavirus, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, we'll all pour one out for him. We'll miss him. But I do have Dr. Science and the Lions Liberty Legal Counsel here tonight. JB, what are you drinking?
I decided to bring out the big guns tonight. Some antiseptic. I got the Lefroy Care, medicinal. The 4 Oak. Can only get it at the duty-free shop. So Don't go to your store looking for it.
And Rico?
I'm drinking my vodka and soda and also the last Corona I had in the fridge. For the...
We're of the same mind.
Yes.
I'm about to crack open a big old Corona.
Corona can. Tall boy.
Yeah,
you don't see those every day. I think I'm going to I might get drunk off these before the end of the show because I have not had time to eat the entire day. So,
same.
Running on empty. And yesterday, for us good Catholics, it was a day of fasting. So barely ate yesterday.
Right. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. So on our last
Rico, you're not a good Catholic.
I am. What are you talking about?
This is news to me.
I've always been.
As far as American Catholics go, yeah, he is. So I mentioned on our last podcast, I was thinking about giving up drinking for Lent, but the Pope came out and he said he wants Catholics to give up trolling. So that's
Did he really?
yes. So no trolling till Easter, but I can keep drinking. So I think that's a win.
Do you
Also, maybe a little bit. It might not be that big of a sacrifice, but hey, that's what the Holy Father wants. That's what the Holy Father gets.
Fair enough.
Anyways, apparently he is sick now. I don't know if it was wise to keep doing mass with the coronavirus outbreak going on in Italy, but that's what he did. And I don't know if that's what he's got, but I do know he only has one lung, so let's hope not.
We run through a lot of popes these days. Like when I was little, it was Pope John Paul II for like 30 years. And I think in the last 5 years, how many have there been? Like 3?
Dude, we're on the 3rd in our lifetime.
Is that it?
Yeah. John Paul, Benedict.
Yeah.
I thought there was another one after Benedict, and I don't even know the current one.
Pope
Francis. Yeah.
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 All right. I'm
Yeah,
not that
good Catholic indeed. Don't even know who the fucking Pope is.
This is unrelated, but Iran's former ambassador to the Vatican just died of coronavirus today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't like he's not the current ambassador. He didn't infect the Pope or anything.
But the Pope is sick.
He is. We don't know if
we don't know what, but that has been circling around the globe that the Pope has some type of respiratory illness of, unknown vector or whatever.
So let's backtrack. It's possible that someone listening might not know what the coronavirus is.
That's not possible.
I find that hard to believe.
There's no way.
You should give it an intro nonetheless.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you'd give it a scientific one.
Did you want me to?
Yeah. It'd be better than me. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll give a crash course. Well, the coronavirus is a newly discovered virus that has seemed to have made the jump from animals to humans sometime in the last, I guess, it's almost March, maybe the last 4 months or so, they're estimating.
My guess is October.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's kind of fluctuates. I was wanting to say 4 to 6 months, maybe to give it a bigger stretch. It is a positive single-stranded RNA virus. For those who don't know, viruses are not all the same. They come in different types of classes. And this virus, coronaviruses in general, have a single RNA strand that gets converted into double-stranded RNA and then messenger RNA, which is then uses to make more copies of itself.
Okay, maybe not this scientific. But so it's like a common cold coronavirus, but this is a novel coronavirus. It's a new strain. The
cold is not a coronavirus. It's one of those different classes that I'm talking about.
Okay.
I won't go into too many details, but they're not that related. This is more related. This is in the same family as SARS is, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and MERS, which I actually wasn't that familiar with because it's kind of localized. It's Middle East respiratory syndrome.
Yeah.
Supposedly jumped from camels, which is also in the same family of coronaviruses. And I guess I'll leave the science at that point.
All right. So I know this is a conspiracy corner, but before we get into the kind of the conspiracy aspect of this, because there's a lot of different angles that a lot of things we can speculate about. We don't know for sure. But I thought let's start it off with talking about why should we care? How dangerous is this? What are we dealing with here? Because I don't know, you guys. Go ahead, Rico.
I think it's hard to say how dangerous it is because then it depends on what kind of numbers and actual real statistics we get. So at first everyone, I think, assumed the Chinese were downplaying the numbers significantly. But then other reports seem to be way overhyping based upon nothing. So I've heard anywhere mortality rate up to 2%, or I think that's generally what I read. It's mortality rate's about 2%, and it's about 3 times as contagious as I guess there's not really an ordinary flu since there's different strains, but I guess the seasonal flu, it's thought to be 3 times as dangerous or contagious if I'm correct on that.
I think it might be a little different, but I totally agree. I think the numbers coming out of China are complete bullshit. And we know in retrospect from when the SARS outbreak happened that they downplayed it by a factor of 16. And we know that this started, the Chinese knew it was going on for a while before they let the rest of the world know. The doctor that leaked it out. He is now dead of the coronavirus, maybe. But he's dead one way or another.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, and again, it's hard to calculate without knowing real numbers. But now we're starting to see things in other parts of the world. And it looks like currently it's about a 3% mortality rate in China and like 1% the rest of the world. So 2% on average. But scientists are saying, I mean, there's so much we don't know. It's likely anywhere from 1 to 10%. It actually seems like it's
mortality rate.
Mortality
Yeah,
rate.
I think a 10% mortality rate is a bit of a stretch.
That's the highest. But
particularly since it's now been in different parts of the world. And unless everyone is lying, I think we notice a 10%
there's a lot of
rate.
lying going on in Iran in particular. Let me see if I can pull up their current official numbers right now.
Do you trust the numbers from the cruise ship, whatever it's called?
Oh, yeah. I do.
That's nowhere near 10%.
Right. You're just saying like the blanket is, from the things we don't know.
So isn't the cruise ship kind of a ridiculous way to look at things? Because on a cruise ship, you're kind of like in a closed, it's not closed environment, but there's like common heat ducts and air conditioning ducts, right? Where it's recycling the air. So it's like, well, everyone in the same house has gotten sick. Well, of course, if you're next to a person every day, and chances are you're going to get that, whatever they're suffering from. Whereas if you're on a cruise ship, and how long were they on the cruise ship? Like 2-3 weeks? They were quarantined?
Dude, everything was wrong about that. And they weren't even taking any kind of like reasonable precautions on the cruise ship. It was a big floating petri dish where people were going to get sick.
Go
ahead.
I was like, well, you bring up some very good points, and I wouldn't use the cruise ship numbers as any indication of how easily transmissible this bug is, but it does give us an idea of mortality, particularly because they're in a cruise ship environment. Pretty much everyone has a chance to get exposed, and if you're on that cruise ship, there's a very high chance of you getting exposed. We can really extrapolate on numbers if you expose 100, 200, or how many people to coronavirus, how many people get sick, how many people get very sick, and how many people died because of the things that you're mentioning. But as far as how easily it is to spread, no, because cruise ship is basically like a petri dish, like you said. But those other numbers that we're talking about, it's almost like a little experiment on itself. It's about as contained as a human experiment ethically as you could possibly get.
Right. What was the mortality rate on the cruise ship?
I'm going to pull it up.
That's
but it
low. I've got it right here. There were 705 cases and 4 deaths.
Exactly.
So what I was getting back to in Iran, their official numbers, let me find them here. 245 cases, 26 deaths. But doctors and things have been talking to people on the ground there. And even it got leaked out when their government folks talking that it's much worse. And there was a study just done. We're looking at the number of cases around the world that came from being in Iran, in different areas of Iran. They're estimating that there's probably like 20,000 people with it in Iran right now, and way more deaths than are being reported. Some people actually think they were concerned that it might have mutated there into a more virulent strain. But
that's what I was wondering, is if it's been thought at least December, probably back to October. So we're talking 5 months, possibly. At what point do the viruses mutate? Because it's not in a virus's best interest to kill off their host, correct? So you'd think that it would mutate to a lesser form eventually. Of course, it could mutate to a more severe form, but for its own survival, it's going to want to be able to be passed from host to host and not kill each host, right?
So, yeah, and it appears that 80% of cases are mild, like nothing to worry about. 20% of cases, you get sick enough that you require hospitalization. Mm-hmm. And if you get that, it's fine. But if you don't get the hospitalization, it's like 65% chance you're going to die. So that the problem is if more people are that sick than we have hospital beds, then we run into.
So what are they doing at the hospital to treat you that you can't get treated like that at home? Are they like breathing, pure oxygen?
Well, yeah, that's one thing. They can incubate you so that the machine can breathe for you is one thing.
Yeah, it's basically like if you're getting a severe case of most of these, like upper respiratory illness like SARS or even like a flu, it's normally associated with some type of pneumonia. And in severe pneumonia, your breathing is severely compromised. Your lungs are being filled with liquid. You need like proper medical attention, or you can easily die from that. And that's what you kind of can't do at home. You can't help someone breathe properly at home, especially not. You can if you're like in hospice care and they have like oxygen and things like that because they know you're dying, but you can't do that for like everyone. It's the pneumonia, like severe pneumonia. It needs hospital treatment.
And another thing with this disease, it binds to the ACE2 receptors, which are not only found in your lungs, but attacks other organs like your kidneys, the testicles apparently too, and some other things.
Well, the thing is, like the ACE2 receptor specifically is a receptor on cells that controls that interacts with the hormone that raises blood pressure. So it's gonna be it's pretty decently spread. As a matter of fact, the cells that express ACE2 in the lungs are actually very few. It's actually expressed in a lot higher concentration in other areas, but due to like the initial point of contact where you might breathe in something or intake it from that area, those are the first cells it tends to infect. But yeah, ACE2 receptors are pretty common.
Right. And I think we'd agree with proper medical care. This isn't much to worry about. But one thing that struck me yesterday, I think it was Mayor de Blasio in New York. He was saying, like, we're ready for this. We've got 1,200 open hospital beds, you know. It's like, all right, 1,200 open hospital beds. You have a city of 9 million people. If like 60% of the people get it, that's 5 million people. You have enough hospital beds for 1,200. I think 20% of that 5 million, that's like 1 million people need hospitalization.
But I think that's going
to everybody if the entire population of New York gets sick at the same time.
The problem, I think with a lot of in the U.S., I see a lot of it is people go to the emergency room far too often.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that panic over very mild symptoms and they go to the emergency room. Right. Or they don't have, well, I don't know if it's changed at all now, but if you don't have, like, they don't have health insurance, they don't have a doctor, so they go to the emergency room. They have, people lead very unhealthy lifestyles. They have gastrointestinal issues because they live shitty lifestyles, so they go to the emergency room. So those people are going to crowd the emergency room first, and they may have nothing wrong with them, but the people who actually do need to get to the emergency room, maybe there's an open hospital bed, but they're not going to be able to see the doctor for like 2 days because everybody is sitting there because there's going to be a panic rush on hospitals.
And so how about this? Say you're a bunch of these nervous, panicky people that like thinks they have the coronavirus. They go to the emergency room and then they get it because there's actually people with the coronavirus in the emergency room.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a matter of time before there's an outbreak in the U.S. Yeah. I give it 2 or 3 weeks.
And the thing is, like we're saying, it's a problem if a lot of people get it at once.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing is pretty contagious. The Los Alamos labs did a study, and the term for it, they call it the R naught. Like the flu, it's like a 2. So someone with the flu is likely to infect 2 other people. This is estimated between 4 and 7. So someone with this is estimated they're going to infect between 4 to 7 more people.
So, this is my question for JB on this. Okay, so in a movie scenario, patient 0 gets sick, right?
Yeah.
And if they're going to infect 4 other people, say we go October 1st, patient 0 is infected. They infect 4 people. Those 4 people infect 4 people. Those 16 people infect, 4 people each. You have an exponential outbreak in less than a month. You have millions of cases, right? So where is this? If it is an R factor of 4, why aren't there more cases?
4 to 7. Well, go ahead. You could answer first, JB, then I'll jump in.
Well, how could I say this? This is like this R naught value. There's a lot of I can even send you a paper. I was about to send you a paper when I read the Los Alamos. You can't really take the R naught value as a literal number in the case that like it's or even like an average number, because the models and the models and the math behind it rely on numbers that aren't even remotely currently available, you should see the confidence interval on that. And as soon as you start treating people for this disease, the likelihood of this spread at that rate immediately starts to decrease. And like the Los Alamos paper even says so itself, judging from the numbers that were coming out, if you want to believe them, I guess we can talk about that we've already seen a drop off from that initial R naught value from mid-February, which is when most people estimated would be the peak transmission, at least in China.
Well,
like
we've seen a slowdown in China for sure.
Yeah.
But I would hope so when you've got 750 million people on lockdown, 10% of the human population, and the draconian measures they're going through in China. I would hope we would see a slowdown. Like,
I think that's overstated the degree of lockdown in China from just what I hear, and I'm obviously not there. There are quarantines, but a lot of people like treated it as kind of a party. So you were allowed out,
as one would.
Yeah. So it became progressively more strict, but also in some of the cities, people are like, like Rebecca's parents live in a different city, and her parents were her dad was going out every day.
In Wuhan?
Not in Wuhan. No.
Wuhan. Shinto is the name of the
city.
city.
See, the level of severity of Wuhan is much different than the rest of China.
Yeah.
But even then, I read a report that like 180,000 people left. What's the name of the province? Hubei is the name of the province, right? And Wuhan's the name of the city.
Yeah,
I heard like 180,000 people left Hubei province since they put the quarantine. Now, because how can you control all those people?
You can't.
Not even China can like keep tabs of all those people. And those are real numbers because the Chinese track them on their phones, because they track all their citizens on their phones. So they literally knew they left Hubei because they saw their phones leave the border.
Oh, yeah. They saw like over 200,000 people left.
Yeah, so those are the real numbers from the China. It's just like at least the number, they're at least willing to tell us 180,000 people broke their quarantine.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that they broke the quarantine, because that would take some work. Because once the quarantine was in place, there was.
Well, yeah, these people left the city and didn't come back.
Before that was actually, like, when it first started to get bad, they fled the city. But once the quarantine in Wuhan was established, there was basically tanks and military checkpoints. So to get out of the city, there's no way 180,000 people were getting out.
I don't know about the city. It's from the province. That's why I wanted to make sure I got the names right. From the report I read, I'm pretty sure it said from Hubei province, not Wuhan city itself.
Right. But even in Hubei, there was pretty strict checkpoints. So I think a lot of these people fled before, like, they could see the quarantine was coming. They could see that it was getting pretty bad, but so they kind of took it on their own to leave. But then they didn't have a lot of places to go, because people weren't, like, hotels. It's a lot easier to discriminate in China than it is in the U.S. So hotels were asking, like, well,
you have a Hubei accent?
Well, they look at their identification, and it would indicate whether or not they were from Hubei. And
dude, even in Korea, there were clubs that wouldn't let Americans in.
Why us?
I tried to pretend I was like Israeli or something.
Oh, you mean when you were in service?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was like right now.
But I have a different answer to JB. I think there are a lot more cases, but if you're not testing, you don't have to report them.
Well, how do you know if you have a mild case?
Well, that's the thing. If people go and like, a doctor's not, if you come and say, like, the symptoms are like, oh, you probably have the flu, go home and rest and drink fluids. That could be a case. We don't know. If it gets worse, go to the hospital.
But to counter that, maybe this is overly optimistic, but in my professional opinion, the cases are probably underreported. I mean, not overreported. There are probably way more people who have contracted this and nothing has happened to them.
Yeah.
Which definitely deflates the numbers of, like, mortality rates, because, like,
so how do we explain, like, whole families that die of it?
Well, I think there's different factors. Your lifestyle, I think, plays a factor in it. Your environmental conditions play a factor in it. So if you're living in Wuhan, it's not the richest province, but there's definitely a lot of industry there. But maybe you're just kind of a lower class worker there. The air is shit.
Yeah.
Your medical care is probably shit.
Yep.
Maybe you're a smoker. You live in a house full of smokers.
You're packed into like sardines.
Yeah. So you're either smoking or you're breathing secondhand smoke. And then you might not have access to, basic medicine. So your immune system might be low to begin with.
Don't they have like Medicare for all there?
They do not have
actually, what's the British one? The national
NHS.
Yeah,
National Health
they
Service.
pretty much said today, like the people they're doing like really bad, we're just gonna have to let them die.
Well, they're probably like, oh, great, we can check or mark a few more people out of the expenditures columns.
Where is this info? You can't just throw out wild claims like that and then
What?
No, not you, Rico.
No,
like how
I'm
he telling
saying
me
this is a forum to throw out wild claims.
This is conspiracy
I always
corner,
forget.
sir.
I always forget what show I'm on, but I'm pretty skeptical about whole families dying of coronavirus.
So,
even
so
if,
one story I'll bring up there is this,
unless they're
like,
completely destitute.
there was this like famous Chinese director or something, and he got sick with it. He went to the hospital. They didn't have room for him. They sent him away. His the rest of his family they lived with died. Not his wife is still alive. She's the survivor. But there was like 4 people in the family that died.
Yeah, I don't see Steven Spielberg getting turned away.
Okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of that because I was thinking more in the skew of mortality and the rate that it mostly kills older people. So his wife did survive, like you said. The director himself was 55 when his died, and the other people who died were his parents of a 55-year-old. I was thinking it's like it killed like people our age and their 12-year-old kid or something like that. So it happened to kill a whole bunch of old people who got sick in the same house.
All right.
So that's
his wife got it too, though. She's alive, but she's sick.
That makes it even less like that doesn't strengthen the position. Like even she's old too, and she happened to survive. So one old dude and 2 older people died, and 1 old person survived.
Yeah, I don't think it's good by any chance or stretch of the imagination, but I have difficulty feeling the global pandemic. Like, I think China's actually returning to more normalized functioning now. Whether that's good or bad in the long term, we'll see in a couple of weeks.
But Rico, people are getting reinfected. It's not like you get immunity. You can get it again. They're going to pack these people, and they work in these factories where like you go there for the week and you live there in these like open bay quarters. They're all going to fucking get it again.
Yeah, maybe.
It's just not going to work out well.
So is it going to be deadlier the second time?
In a lot of cases it is. Like Dengue fever, there's this thing, it's called ADE. I forget what it stands for, but it's something like you get it, it's mild, your body creates antibodies. Then when you get it again, the antibodies actually help carry it into your cells and your organs and shit, and it makes it much worse the second time. And depending upon how long this is going on for China, maybe some of these deaths are something like that.
But isn't kind of a getting sick again kind of common no matter what the situation is? I know like when I get a cold in the winter,
usually it's a different strain that you get the second time.
I get symptoms again like 2 weeks later. And I always think like, oh, I forgot to change my toothbrush or something. So that's why I got sick, which probably is the case. Or you didn't wash your sheets or there's just germs around the house, or you're getting sick again. So I don't think that's unique for coronavirus.
Yeah. And so I think that most healthy non-smokers have nothing to worry about. I also think that this is going to spread like crazy because it's got a like up to 27-day incubation period. And all these quarantines are for 14 days. So that does shit. And you're asymptomatic for a lot of it. And you're most contagious actually while you're asymptomatic. So you're going to get it from somebody who seems perfectly fine and healthy. And it's going to spread. And the old and the smokers and the weak, we're going to have a lot of them die. And it sucks. I was a smoker for years. I haven't really smoked at all in a few years now, but I vape. I don't know if that's as bad, if that's like,
yeah, as do I. So
like, am I at risk?
Old, though,
I mean, my mom, I have aunts and uncles that are older and not in great health. Like, it's
so
like,
I have the best
I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing that should at least give us some solace. Most of the people who control the levers of power in our lives
Oh yeah, I was thinking
are
about that.
old.
I didn't want to say it out
Think
loud.
about everybody on the presidential stage. They're all like septuagenarians. So if
But
anyone has a self-interest to, make sure these types of things are contained, are the people who are in control of our lives, because they're all old. So
Right.
think about it that way. That should make you feel better.
So I want to shift into the conspiratorial side. So where did this come from? Is this from bat soup, or did this come from the level 4 bioweapons lab 8 miles up the road in Wuhan?
I think there's 3 possibilities, broad possibilities. 1, there's the wet market, the official story. 2, there's the Chinese bioweapon lab.
Wait, the wet market. Hold on. So it was reported that some people believed it started there.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've actually
reportedly some people believed it started.
No,
what is that? What does that mean?
We don't have to say it like that.
But that's what they said in like the New York Times.
Well, let me like from what I can gather, they presumed, I forget what it was said, but either way, it seems like it could have started in multiple places. The wet market that they thought it had started was just a major hub of spreading, because it's a place where people gather. It is possible, like I just saw from very reputable sources, like maybe like even this morning, that they've pinpointed a different spot where they think it's really started. It's just because it's a wet market, it was a place to spread the disease.
Can we talk about
maybe it was some American was there and they just saw the wet market. They're like, look at this shit. This is where this came from.
Can we talk about the science behind the wet market theory for a second, though? So I thought that was kind of like the Chinese story. It's like, it started at the wet market, which they've since banned wet markets, as far as I know. But the science behind the wet market, if I'm to understand this, is like it started in a bat, say. It's a bat virus.
Yes.
And it spread from a bat to maybe a different animal. And this was the problem with the wet market, is you're taking animals from different ecosystems and placing them together where they shouldn't naturally be together. So maybe the virus went from a bat to a different animal that it shouldn't ever have any proximity to. And it kind of mutated in that second animal. And then it was passed to humans somehow, whether it was through, they're eating it or handling it or whatever. But because it went to a second animal, that's where it became especially kind of potent and virulent, is because this unnatural transition. Am I understanding?
Yeah. Wait. I got to tell a story real quick. Have you guys heard the current explanation for the HIV virus? The current explanation is there was a monkey that had a virus. There was another species of monkey that had a different virus. And some dude who eats bushmeat, he was slaughtering both of these kinds of monkeys, got infected with both viruses, and they mutated inside of him and became HIV. I find it easier to believe that Reagan made it in a lab, but
that's easier to believe.
What you're saying right now about how this worked in the wet market reminds me of the current story on HIV.
Well, I don't know if that's the case. Like viruses can jump from different creatures, but I don't know if it's so much the wet market allowed it the opportunity to jump from a bat to something else, because like we all need to come to terms here that this epidemic is like brand new. It's like a newborn child in terms of like disease research. People are just throwing things at the wall to see if it fucking sticks, just to get stuff out. The amount of papers, like actual literal like journal articles I've seen being churned out in the last month and a half on something people barely understand is insane. So like think of everyone, all researchers, like people who do my job are just trying to get ahead of this and publish first. We need to think about this on that aspect. From again, similar to what I just said about having a different like ground zero for the virus that I read this morning. Another article I read 2 days ago says that it might not even come from a bat at all. The initial idea that it came from a bat is due to its similarity to the SARS virus that is actually quite confirmed to come from a bat, because we've been able to study it for over a decade.
Dude, I heard the bat, I heard the snake, and then they had that article about, what was that animal, the pangolin or something?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they're going to kill them. Don't say it was from them.
That's my point. When the virus has only been on your I guess on your landscape for 4 fucking months, you're going to get this amount of noise. That's not nearly enough time to do proper science on anything.
But let's step back in time to the beginning of October when there was this exercise done called Event 201. It was Johns Hopkins University, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum, where they ran a simulation of a novel coronavirus that started from a Chinese bat and spread and became a pandemic and ended up killing 65 million people.
Are you talking about that Dean Koontz thing?
No, I'm talking about a study that they just did in October, like a live study, a simulation of a coronavirus that came from a Chinese bat that became a pandemic and killed 65 million people. And
that's not. I just literally mentioned the SARS, and you remember the craze and hysteria that went over SARS that did absolutely fuck all. Of course, they're going. That's exactly the same scenario. Something that happened a decade ago.
Well, I know, but I need to pull this up. At the end of the study, they're like, well, there's these 7 things we need to do. There's 7 takeaways and 3 action items. One of the action items was in their simulation, they're like, there's going to be all these conspiracy theorists saying all this stuff. So we need to get influencers and people like this. And like, it all read to me like we need to clamp down on free speech and shut up conspiracy theorists and stop like them spreading disinformation.
There's that House bill. I emailed it. I forget. What was it, like HB 230 or something like that, where the government is trying to clamp down on free speech, but not call it a clamp down.
Yeah.
But like what can be posted on the internet without, and you can't comment on certain things for all in the name of, spreading fake news.
Yeah.
Which is at the same time as this, which.
All the other takeaways where we need to get like these supra governmental like world bodies like joined with the business and all these things and able to like outside the law do what needs to be done to stop these things from happening. It just sounds.
Is that really what it said?
Here, let me send it to you. I'll pull it up.
Because like as much as I love free speech, I don't like disinformation. I don't think like the Goon Squad should come in and beat your head in because you post something on Reddit, but I'm not in favor of disinformation either.
Well, the great crucible of thought is that the marketplace, you put out something that's inflammatory or false or whatever, the free market allows someone to counter that.
Are you kidding? So a lie doesn't travel across the world faster than the truth can put its pants on? Was that quote a lie? But is that quote a lie? Do you think it's an exaggeration? No, lie.
I think
you're right. A lie is a ridiculous thing to say, but do you think that's an exaggeration? I think disinformation and sensational stuff can travel much more rapidly than the boring truth.
That's fine. A lie can travel faster than the truth, but I don't think the remedy for a lie is to have a monitor on what people can say.
Neither do I. I never supported that. But I'm not going to stand here and say that disinformation is good. Case in point, I was reading this.
I didn't say disinformation is good. I just said, you know what? Everything has to be tested in the marketplace of ideas.
I just brought it up because the way things are unfolding seem exactly like what happened in the simulation. And if we're doing the conspiracy thing, it's like, are there forces that want something like this in order to wrest control? And just to bring up the Bill and Gates Foundation and Bill Gates or whatever, all the stuff he's doing with vaccines, he's one of those people that's concerned about overpopulation, which I don't understand because most scientists today think it's going to top off at around like 9 billion and start declining like indefinitely. And like he was even in a speech recently talking, not maybe like a year or two ago, talking about how we need to like reduce the population by 10% or something while he was talking about vaccines. And it sounded sinister, but it's been explained off as...
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been involved with these types of things for decades.
Yeah, and did you know his dad was at one time like the head of the Planned Parenthood?
No, actually, I didn't know that, but I don't see what relevance that is.
That's because I was making excuses
Kill them all,
that I heard
Jamie.
that. They started because they wanted to like exterminate minorities, dude.
There's a lot of people that think the population needs to be culled in the greater good of the earth.
Not me, but maybe Bill Gates. No,
I don't know him personally.
See, I don't think that's what happened.
But I think
I want to throw out all the possibilities.
Even if that's true, this is a very sloppy way of going about it.
Maybe it's
I
a
agree.
test run.
And
I
so,
don't think the fatality rate is high enough if it was actually.
Well, if the fatality rate is any higher than probably literally 10%, it probably causes societal collapse. Can you imagine 1 in 10 people dying?
That'd be crazy.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, so like we're talking about absurd things here.
Speaking of tests, though, you probably know about this. They do something.
How many people have you killed, JB?
This is what I'm talking about. As evil as you think Bill Gates is, he's smart enough to know that trying to engineer some virus to kill poor people is an incredibly bad idea. Because it'll easily get out of control and destroy civilization.
JB,
He's smart enough to know that.
JB, I don't think this. I was trying to make that clear, but I want to bring up all the different possibilities, all the scenarios.
I want to bring up my conspiracy that I briefly alluded to on an email before. So, like I was saying, there's the theory that it's the wet market. Boring. There's a theory that it was the Chinese lab, which we'll go more into a minute, I think. But my theory is it's a deep state American plot. And follow me here, because the deep state hates Trump, right? The deep state is a bunch of liberals.
That's true.
Who want to say, who always know what's best for everyone. And what's best for everyone in a crowded planet is to cull the population a little bit. Hard choices have to be made.
Those people
right?
do think that.
So how can we accomplish many different ends with one simple stroke of genius? We're going to release a coronavirus in China. Why we're going to do this is China is our economic enemy. So we're going to weaken China. They're going to be the first hit. The first hit is going to be the worst hit, right? So China is going to be hit the hardest because they're the first.
People in Trump's camp, like Bannon, thought China's our biggest enemy, biggest thing we got to be concerned about. Go on.
Well, maybe he's along with the deep state. I don't know. So anyway,
I said that too. Am I in the deep state?
You
guys probably think I am.
I don't know you. I don't know. I haven't. I've only seen you once in the last 5 years, so I can't tell you for sure.
You saw me last year.
Twice. Yeah, you're twice. Whatever. So it hits China hard. It's going to fuck up China's economy. But it doesn't end there. If whatever fucks up China's economy will eventually trickle to the U.S. And so the U.S. economy will be hit not as hard as China, but still hard enough to screw up the stock market. What does Trump win on? Re-election. He wins on the stock market. So what else is he going to run on? He runs on, well, we're all making money. What if he can't run on that? What if the stock market takes a dive right before the election? There's layoffs. People are not going to work. Trump's selling point is moot.
Dude, this gives him cover, though, for the economy tanking.
I don't know.
Because the economy was likely to tank no matter what. But now it's like, it's the coronavirus.
However, I'm hearing
it's all the coronavirus.
He sacked the entire pandemic response team.
Yeah.
And people are going to harp on that and saying, well, no wonder all of us died. You fired 2 years ago. The people were supposed to take care of this shit.
Listen, so the Democrats have been harping on about, he's like, he cut the CDC, he cut the NIH, all this and that. He's like, well, yeah, he put it in his budgets, but none of those ever passed Congress. None of those cuts ever happened. None of that ever happened.
You say so.
It doesn't matter.
We still have money to bomb Yemen, but we don't have a pandemic response team. That's all I know.
Perception is greater than reality, right? So what the Democrats are currently selling right now is, Trump says there's nothing to worry about. Are you kidding me? Pence is the leader of the corona response team, whatever.
Yeah. So, he's a Christian. They don't believe in science. How can he protect us?
Not Indiana Christians, at least. East Coast Christians. You're biased. East Coast Christians believe in science, Howie.
Catholics do.
The coronavirus response team isn't diverse enough, so they're already hammering them on this. So what can, according to the liberals, the deep state, we're going to hurt China. We're going to cull the population a little bit. And we're going to make sure that Trump can't win re-election. All in one beautiful masterstroke, timed perfectly.
Man, they could have just run a good candidate or something. That seems like a whole lot easier.
Well, I don't think the deep state can control who actually runs. Yeah. Bernie can put his hat in the ring.
I kind of think they put Pete Buttigieg out
Yeah,
there.
I think Buttigieg is the deep state candidate.
And,
after all the
and yet
shenanigans in
we're
Iowa.
truly worried about the deep state. Really?
Right.
And you
So-
expect me to be worried about the deep state?
So before
They
we
just released a virus in China, JB. Did you not listen to what I just said?
I just don't believe it.
Before we say exactly what we think, I want to talk about a couple possibilities. And one thing we know that is done is something called gain of function testing, where they take viruses and they make them more transmissible, more deadly. And the reason for that, they say, is so that they can learn, well, if it happens naturally, if it mutates, we need to know how to fight it and how to better whatever. I think that's bullshit. I think it's covered to do bioweapons testing is what I think. But anyways, in America, we banned that in like 2013, except we made 10 exceptions for a couple studies. One of them was for a coronavirus in a bat. And also we saw recently that we had that dude that got arrested here in America that was like smuggling information, and I think two of his Chinese associates like biological samples to China. And this guy was helped set up the level 4 bio research lab in Wuhan. So I don't know. There's all this stuff going on, and we've got this bio lab in Wuhan. They're probably doing some of this gain of function testing. We know like that the fucking Chinese don't follow any rules. They've been using CRISPR to like genetically engineer humans. Like I guess they threw that guy in jail, but I guess they had to because it got out. But I mean, there was probably some kind of study going on there. And we saw there was some Indian scientists that put up this paper saying that it looked like there were these HIV inserts in the virus that made it look like it was engineered. Zero Hedge reported on that. They tweeted it out, and they got permanently banned from Twitter. Twitter said because they put the doctor's information in there, but Zero Hedge's like, well, that was all publicly available information. We didn't dox him. But they're banned. Like Facebook, all these other like social media platforms are banning people. Reddit's like cracking down on, they don't want these conspiracy theories going out. We got to get only the true information. So those Indian scientists, they pulled their paper. It hadn't been peer reviewed or anything yet, but this was their initial thoughts. And I don't know. There's a lot of misinformation all over the place, but it seems to me, I feel like this is a man-made thing. Now, do we think this was something done intentionally and unleashed, like Rico was saying? I kind of feel like it might have got out by accident. Chinese labs twice accidentally let SARS get out. And there are some reports, I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly some of these scientists, sometimes when they're done testing on animals, sell these animals at those wet markets, like the corpses.
What? They can't possibly get that much money for these things.
I mean, if you just think of how inept government all this shit is, even if it's a bio-level 4 safety thing, so I feel like something.
I was kind of amused.
Like case in point, like you're talking about BSL-4. We have a couple of BSL-4 labs in the United States. They've been doing
China has one that happens to be 8 miles from where this started.
But we've been doing testing, for example, on hemorrhagic fevers like hantavirus and Ebola and whatnot at those facilities for years. When was the last time you heard from somebody in the surrounding area getting one of those hemorrhagic fevers?
Okay,
we created Lyme disease in a lab.
How is BSL? What is it called? BSL-4?
Yeah, BSL-4.
Biosafety level 4.
Or lab.
Huh? You cut out. I didn't get that.
Who certifies that it's a BSL-4 lab?
I imagine some type of safety like OSHA.
Okay.
OSHA, like OSHA. Not OSHA, but something like that. I don't know what it's
China
called.
Just say, hey, this is a BSL-4 lab. Like,
we don't control China. Like
exactly.
we have our own regulations. I don't know what the fuck BSL-4 is in China.
There is international outcry.
That it's secure as an American BSL?
I don't know. I was only talking about America.
There was a lot of outcry when they were building it because we were like, "Are you fucking kidding? They let SARS out twice. What?"
Okay.
They can say it's secure, but it doesn't mean it's as secure as something
No. But we're talking about two different things. I balked at the idea that this was deliberate.
I'm with you. I don't think it was.
I've had plenty of times on this show and other shows on Lions for Liberty where I've called China out. I've explicitly said I don't trust China at all. especially when it comes in terms of scientific research. I've said that several times on many shows. You guys remember that, right? I
Yeah.
am no, I don't, I can trust China as far as I can throw it. And it's like the third largest country in the world. All right. So I'm
just
not
the blowback on this kind of thing, if it was done on purpose and got out, like you would
I balk at the only reason I do, particularly from our end, and maybe this is just my jingoism, I think, like, from anyone who knows even bare minimum about microbiology, virology, doing these types of things and actually releasing them is far too dangerous. You're far more likely to end up killing yourself than your enemy.
Okay,
There are far more effective ways of killing people than doing things like that.
Okay, let me say a hypothetical that's not related to a deliberate. Say the BSL-4 lab is not as secure as it should be. My kind of thought, my actual theory, although I like the deep state theory, I don't really believe it. My theory is that China did release this by accident. They had created some kind of, or they had introduced this in animals to test vaccinations against future coronaviruses.
It's possible.
Right.
And I think that's why this virus existed, is they were trying to test vaccines for the future, and there was a fuck up. And that's how it got released.
That's what I think too.
That could easily happen, and I don't have any evidence to support or refute that. And I was even going to say, I think it was either last year or the year before, there was a lab in China that had published some gain-of-function studies that they did, and I think it was the flu, and there was like a literal international outcry because, as Howie said, gain-of-function studies are banned. You cannot get government funding.
Oh, we lifted the ban in 2017. They're illegal again now here.
I don't know, not for me.
We banned it for 5 years.
Maybe not for me. Me working at a hospital, I can't get a grant for gain of function studies.
Trump
maybe the Army.
Oh yeah,
Army
that's after Trump was in charge. Yeah. They lifted in 2017 after Obama was out and Trump was in.
There was an international outcry when they
tried
to publish this paper
banned
about
it. Trump lifted it
because it's too dangerous. What I do as a microbiologist, I actually knock out genes that I think make bacteria more powerful. I don't add them in. I've worked with bacteria that have a 50% mortality rate if you can catch it. Imagine if I made it easier to fucking catch.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about.
I don't like this gain of function testing thing. Not one bit.
It's absurd. And almost
it's a little much if you ask me. It's a little much.
Far too dangerous to conduct. and I'm not saying, and on top of that, I'm saying I don't trust China. I can see them doing some nonsense like this and accidentally causing a pandemic, but by no means did they do it on purpose.
No, I don't think
because it's far too dangerous, especially considering some of the conflicting reports where I say they're more predisposed to contracting this. So why would they engineer a virus to kill themselves?
Exactly.
I 100% agree, but I want to throw a hypothetical out there that I don't think this is true, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Right before. So in like mid-October, we had some like military thing there. I forget, some kind of exercise, whatever. We had 200 U.S. soldiers there. And then afterwards.
Where?
In
China?
In Wuhan, near Wuhan.
I'm skeptical about all these things.
They were. I could find the thing. I forget the name of the
link where
I forget the name of the exercise.
Some Chinese actors were in China.
Hold on.
Find nothing. Like in Canada, I could find nothing to corroborate.
No, hold on. Just let me finish this real quick. There were a bunch of U.S. folks there, and 2 weeks later, the first case of coronavirus. Could we have done it on purpose there?
I don't know.
Well, that was what I was
China
just
and
saying.
Americans are there all the fucking time. It's kind of a.
I don't want to believe we would be capable of something like that, but it's not impossible.
You serious? We're not capable?
I said I don't want to believe we're capable of something like that.
We're capable, but normally think about all the hand-wringing it took to drop bombs in Japan, and we were at war.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Okay, so I saw one good point today where people were talking about the Spanish flu and comparing this, and they said, well, at least we're not in the middle of a world war now, like when that broke out.
Spanish flu?
Yeah, that is a plus.
That make things easier.
That's a plus.
And also having 21st century medicine does help a bit too. But it's not going to help contain it. It's just going to help people like maybe not die, but we don't have the means to contain a pandemic still.
No,
if anything, it's worse. If anything, it's worse. We're even far more interconnected than we were in fucking 1918.
Oh, yeah. It's too late for any kind of containment. The best thing to do is just make sure the sickest get the health care they need.
Yeah, that's the only thing we can do. It's gonna spread. It's gonna run its course, and then it's just gonna be like just any other virus. We're a member of this ecosystem, just like everything else, and there's things out there to kill us. We need just to come to terms with that.
So let me ask you guys: pretend this is way more deadly and way more transmissible than it is in reality. What?
Like, I need some hard numbers.
No, I'm not saying.
Talking about?
Not. I'm just a different disease. Say there was something
hypothetical one.
A hypothetical, much more deadly, much more transmissible. What should the government do?
I don't know what they should do.
Does your libertarianism go out the window, and do you want like strict shit happening, or do you not?
I think nature has to play its course one way or the other. I don't think. I think there could be recommendations, but you have to make your own kind of determination about how to best protect yourself, which should involve having just quarantining yourself.
Yeah, because I mean, I thought about it, like seeing some of the things happening in China. Like, if the authorities came here and was like, "We're dragging you off to quarantine," and you're like, "Yeah, we're just gonna leave your dogs in your house to starve to death," I'd be like, "Fuck no."
That's not what they did. To the best of my understanding, you were quarantined in your own house.
I'm just saying. No, some people were dragged off. Some people, if you violated quarantine or some of the things like multiple times, you're like taken away.
Maybe.
So then, yeah, I'm sure some people put a bag over your head at that point.
Or even, how about this? So you have to wear a mask in public, and the government there, they give you like very cheap. You can buy like 3 masks a day, like allotted to you. But there's people there selling like knockoffs that look like the official masks. You could just get one of these cheap and go out, do what you want to do. There are people even worse selling reused masks that are so unhygienic.
How can you not tell if
people know what they're doing? They just want a mask, so they just want to be able to go out and do their business.
People waited in such long lines for masks. It's crazy. I told you guys how much I spent on masks and shipped to China, right?
And did we did we mention on the show that it doesn't help you not get sick?
Yeah.
Well, it offers some protection, but it's not
it helps you to not pass it on if you have something it's better
that it's more effective as preventing you from spreading it as opposed to you spreading it. But it's up, I think, about 70 to 80, I think, somewhere around there. Like, as long as it's not aerosolized. If someone like coughs on you and they're close, it's still in the large enough water droplets where the mask should drop it. But if it can travel in air in long distances, like some other diseases, like measles, for example, can travel in air at long distances to the point where those masks don't do shit. But if it requires to stay hydrated in a water droplet, like the flu commonly does, then this should offer you some protection. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than nothing.
So we've been going on for a while. There's 2 things I want to talk about. One, what were they?
While you remember, I'm going to get another beer.
Okay. So, I think I remember. So, JB, what I want to talk about is 1, what do we think are reasonable precautions that people maybe should do? And 2, our predictions. How do we see this playing out? I don't know if we should wait for Rico, or do you want to go ahead and start? Like, what would you suggest someone do if they're worried about it? And how do you see this all playing out?
Well, I honestly wouldn't be worried. It depends on what you mean by worried. If you mean like...
Well, I'll go first, so you'll see what I mean. To me, I feel like even if this turns out to be nothing, it's a good idea to probably have like a month's worth of like water and like canned food or something, some rice and beans around, just in case you had to be in your house for a month.
Well, I'll say right off the bat, I personally feel regardless of what's going on, that's probably, if you can afford it, that's probably in your best interest to always have around. So I'll just start off it there. You should probably always have like that. If you have the space, you can afford it. Having a month supply of, and just in general, is something you probably should do. It's just, there's a normal level of preparedness.
I just started doing that. Like when I go to Target or the grocery store, I just start adding like $5-6 extra of giant tubs of water and canned.
I consider that just to be a normal level of preparedness, and I think that's something you should be doing in general.
So Rico, the questions were, what would you recommend to someone to do if they're worried at all? And
I would stock up on just things you can have around the house that are cheap, like that you could eventually use anyways, like medicines, like vitamins, bandages, antibiotics. Oh, you can't really have antibiotics. I heard you could have fish antibiotics.
What's that?
Yeah, that's true. So you know how you need to get a prescription for antibiotics? You can get fish antibiotics, which are the same exact thing.
You mean for fish tanks? Because I use medicine in my aquarium. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I think antibiotics for fish.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I have like
or you
medicine.
just put them in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
They work just the same for people
when they get sick. Yeah.
They work just the same for people. You could get them without a prescription.
Yeah,
Truckers have been stocking those up for a long time.
Have those, vitamin C, vitamin D, and then just like, non-perishable food that can last a couple of years.
Yeah, regardless if this is anything, it makes sense to be able to like have what you need for a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Mormons all have like half a year or a year's worth of supplies, like all of them.
So you know what you probably do need is, if you have all that stuff and society hits the fan, you probably need a gun. But most people that listen to this probably already have one.
Yes, that's also true. No matter what this turns out to be.
And I'd like to add that I think this is unlikely unless everyone is wildly lying. This is not going to lead to the point where you'll need a gun, and I don't even think it'll lead to the point where we'll have any type of real scarcity. Any more than maybe like when they scare us with the next big hurricane.
Dude,
everyone buys all the bottled water.
If they tell us it's gonna snow here, I go to the store and there's no bread, there's no eggs, there's no toilet paper.
but then
gone.
when it snows,
just because there's a couple inches of snow coming.
Because
so if our supply chains get shut down,
because people are ridiculous. Because people are ridiculous.
Yeah, actually, toilet paper did run out over in China and Hong Kong.
So I was like kind of pissed that I feel like Trump wasn't being straight up about this, but I'm like, actually, he just bought me a few more weeks to get prepared and get the things I need to have in the house.
And then you wonder why the people in power aren't straight up with you about things. Even if this was as bad as like some people think it is, what would be the advantage of telling everyone so they can flip the fuck out and destroy society before the disease happens? Because that's what would happen.
Do you think
lose their fucking minds?
Yeah. Yeah,
they would.
They would lose.
I don't want the government lying to us, though. I want to know the truth.
And then have society collapse on you before the virus even hits, because that's what would happen.
And whatever. The hospitals would already be full right now.
Yeah.
They would already be full. People would be like, I feel a tingling in my throat. I better go to the hospital.
Exactly, because we see what happens when they're like, oh, this hurricane is going to be a category 4, and all of a sudden all the bread is gone, and then you get some heavy rain, and then the supermarket's open the next day. Why did everybody buy all the bread? How many times has that happened? Imagine if they told you this is a 10% mortality pandemic spreading through China. The entire country would be on fire.
Just as far as that point, I thought it was kind of funny, that Reddit article that you or the Reddit post you sent today. Uh-huh. So the person posted, this is just like the Spanish flu, which killed 50 million people, which I think that's pretty close to accurate. But it said it had a mortality rate of 2%. Mm-hmm. Which would mean, if my figures, that 2.5 billion people got infected with the Spanish flu, right? If mortality rate is 2%,
2.5 billion people were on the earth in 1918.
Exactly. But if 50 million people died of the Spanish flu and the mortality rate was 2%, wouldn't that mean 2.5 billion people were infected?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to use a calculator.
Okay. Whatever it was an absurd statistic that was in no way close to reality. Like, so you would have to times 50 million people times 50 to get the actual number of people that were affected.
Well, so in the Bill and Melinda Gates study, in their
you're right.
In their simulation,
50 million.
In their simulation, they had 65 million people they thought would die from something like this.
Well, there's more of us now, so.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like,
The Spanish
and this is what I was trying to say about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. One, it's not unusual that they might target coronaviruses because SARS exists.
Oh, they also
remember-
had a patent on coronavirus that it's expired
And we
in
remember,
July.
we're all old enough to remember how everyone flipped their shit on SARS, and miraculously, we're all still alive. And two, ever since I was an undergrad at Penn State in biology classes, we've been taught about the existential threat of a next viral pandemic hitting our species. This is not an unusual thing for people who do this all the time or study this all the time. It's only a matter of time before a pandemic kills a good fraction of us. Only a matter of time. This is par for the course. This has happened throughout our evolutionary history. This is what it means to be alive on Earth. Same thing with super volcanoes and comets. A pandemic, a viral pandemic that brings a good chunk of us down is going to happen.
For a second there, you're just listing off my biggest fears. It's like,
Because these are existential threats that we know have
asteroids,
happened on Earth.
volcanoes.
Because
a comet carrying a super coronavirus.
Because these are
With
things that we know
volcano on it.
We know these will happen because they have happened. We have record of them happening on Earth multiple times in history. So it's bound to happen again.
So Rico, you're getting your second beer. Besides the what would you recommend? The last question I had was, how do you see this playing out? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's going to hit the U.S. in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I think it's not going to be as bad as it was in China, but I think there's going to be an overreaction by everyone, and I think mid-April or beginning to mid-April, there's going to be a lot of flights canceled. There's going to be a lot of people that are stopped, shuttered from work or whatever the word is.
Will we make it till the LNC still?
Yes. I'm a little worried about WrestleMania, though. I got to be honest.
When is that?
So,
yeah, no one there washes their hands. I would not go.
April 4th or something like that. So, WrestleMania in an empty stadium would not be quite as fun. So, a little worried about that. And I'm actually supposed to go to Spain in like the third week of April. So, I don't know about that either. So, I think April is going to suck for the U.S.
Spain has 25 cases right now.
Yeah, but you never know. Within a month, I think
by April it'll be 250,000.
Yeah,
it's all a matter of if they've closed their borders, right? Maybe they won't even want Rico in because we have more cases than they do.
Please, who's going to deny me?
With a name like Rico, how could they?
Yes,
Spain.
exactly.
Dude, how about those cruise ships now that no one will let them dock?
Oh, there's more?
There's another one where somebody's got it on it, and like so far Jamaica's like, yeah, get the fuck out. And then Mexico's like, nope, not stopping here.
Them? It's like
no, because Jamaica, they if it gets out there, they don't have the health infrastructure to deal with it. Neither does Mexico or these other places.
Fuck off.
And like,
isn't the warm weather supposedly a detriment to this particular strain?
So it survives on surfaces. The time it survives on surfaces when it's warmer out is less. So those are, again, because this is so new, estimates based on related viruses like the flu and SARS and other things that they tend to die or become less prominent once it gets warmer. So it should probably follow the same pattern based on other related viruses. You still have somebody with the coughs in your face, you're going to get it. But if you touch a doorknob like an hour after them, you won't.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks, shit's gonna hit the fan here. Not whether or not it's particularly severe, but just people panicking and overreaction. And I think you're gonna have to be prepared to sit at home for a couple of weeks doing nothing.
Yeah, I'm far more concerned about people panicking than I am of this virus.
Yeah. So
yes, true.
Save up some money for your rent or your mortgages. Get food because you're not going to
touching my face. I can't stop it. God damn it! Stroking this beard.
Yeah. Is that CDC report real that we should all shave our beards?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I'm not. It.
I refuse. I'm not.
Oh yeah, they were talking
no
about.
way.
I haven't been clean shaven since I was 19.
I'm definitely going to get this anyway. So what's the point? But so my prediction is, I think 60% of the human race will get this, and I think 2% of those will die.
Well, that's a pretty big number.
Yes.
That's really bad.
Yeah, that's what I think's going to happen.
So how many people are there? There's like, say, 2.5 billion people right now. Is that?
No, I'm talking about
No, it's
I'm talking about
7.
worldwide.
Is it that many?
7, yeah, at least.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
might be more than
Yeah,
7
It's
now.
closer to 8. Let's say it's 7. So 7 billion. Let me see how many zeros is that. I got the calculator.
7.8. Yeah, you're right, Howie. It's closer to 8. 7.8
All
estimated.
right, I'll do 7.8. Let's see. 7, 8, 0, 0. So that's
Let's buy a funeral parlor.
7 million. If my mom didn't sell it,
Damn it.
It's pretty morbid.
times
That's worse than my stock buying
0.60
proposal. We
equals
should pull in and get some stocks.
times
That seems like an opportune time.
0.02
Yes.
equals.
I think buy
right.
stocks in the beginning of April.
So
That's
I
when
guess I'm predicting that 93 million people will die from this.
that's pretty bad.
And I also
I'm
think
taking the under.
that it won't go away. That every year it'll be like, oh, coronavirus season again, just like it's flu season.
Oh, are there going to be different strains where they give you
Probably.
a coronavirus shot,
Jesus
but it's
Christ,
the wrong strain?
So we got to get into this. We got to get into this.
It's still not conclusive that coronaviruses can mutate that rapidly. MERS has been like pretty much contained.
This is a lab-made one though, with HIV in it.
So you claim? No, it has a similar entry to HIV.
Well,
It doesn't
you
have
agreed. You
HIV.
think it probably escaped from the Wuhan.
I'm saying
Institute
that
of
it's
Virology.
possible because I don't trust China and they're up to some fuckery over there.
Well,
I
if you
know.
had to bet where it came from, would you not bet on that?
What was the question?
Like, if you had to bet, put some money on it. Did it come from
if I had
there
to-
or somewhere else?
If I had to bet if it was just naturally occurring or a accidental release,
Yeah.
I would still bet natural.
No way. Okay.
No, but I also play roulette, so I'm used to like 50-50 odds.
All right. Well, so something I totally forgot to bring up. When I first saw it, I thought this is ridiculous. So it was this post on 4chan back in the end of January talking about this guy saying like this escape from this lab. It's got to do all this shit, invest in pharmaceuticals and plastics, like sell your other stocks. And one thing he said, though, is like they're not going to be able to contain it in China. The first place they're going to actually see if any of this containment shit works is in Italy. And then we see like the first major European place where this happens and they're starting to like do something about it. I'm like, holy shit, maybe this 4chan guy is onto something.
That's not like profound knowledge. Like,
well, no, but it was
obviously they're not going to contain it. It's impossible. It's 2020.
It was 3 weeks prior, and now he's saying the Italy thing, but he's also saying he's like, if it gets to Brazil, that's when you know you need to go stock up and buy things. We just had, I think, like yesterday, the first case in Brazil.
Why Brazil?
He's talking about something about like the bat populations there and the chance of it mutating and becoming something worse.
You mean
that's
jumping
ridiculous.
from humans back into bats, back into humans?
I don't know.
Is what he suggests.
That's so ridiculous.
I don't know. This guy had the Italy thing right. I saw Brazil. I'm like, I better get some extra water and shit.
What do you mean he had the Italy thing right?
He was saying that the first place where they're going to see if they can contain it and do anything about it is going to be in Italy. And the first European country where we saw a big outbreak is Italy, where they're trying to see what they can do to contain it.
Right now.
Like this guy said 3 weeks before it happened.
If you say so.
There was an Asian just running through the room. Gave me coronavirus. So
Did she bring you another Corona?
no, nor did she bring me the wings she cooked, which I'm.
You see, speaking of human stupidity, the amount of like absurd random racism over this coronavirus is absurd. I was reading in French news like cab drivers won't pick up anyone who looks like Asian in like France and stuff like that. I'm like, for all you know, these people have like been born and raised in France and never fucking been to China. Most of them aren't even fucking Chinese. And it's like,
and how about human malevolence that this death cult in Korea is supposedly purposely spreading it? There's over 2,000 cases in Korea now, but did you guys know about this death cult? I can't remember the name, but the leader of it, they've been around for like 30 years or so. He's 80 something. He says he's the second coming of Christ and Lucifer, but he won't be in his full he won't be in his full power until the apocalypse.
Of course.
And apparently his people are trying to bring it about, and one of their chapters was in Wuhan, and they supposedly have been trying to spread it around Korea.
Wasn't there a death cult in Japan that released nerve gas on one of their subway trains?
Yes.
I am remembering that. When I was a kid, you're not that much older than me, so you're probably a kid too when this happened. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I do remember that.
Yep. Crazy world, though. Yeah, between the stupidity, the panic, the malevolent people, it's going to be a mess. But hey, what you gonna do?
I'm going to keep living my life.
Gotta live long.
Zero Hedge has some ridiculous advice, like stay 6 feet away from people. I'm like, I live in a fucking city. I got to take the subway to work. I can't stay like 6 inches away from people on my regular day. It's absurd. How am I supposed to stay 6 feet away from people?
So one bit of good news for me and you as vapors, what is it, polyglycol or whatever? What's that like?
Propylene glycol.
Yeah. So these studies in the 40s found that it like kills viruses.
I did see that. It does have some.
They like
studies
use it
in the 40s.
Yeah.
So 80 years ago.
Yep. But I mean, that's what they used in inhalers up until recently. It carries chemicals and things like very well and stuff too. And I think they used to like pump it through like the ventilation systems in hospitals.
Did they?
Yeah, that's what I read.
You read a lot of things, though.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
I don't know if you can believe all of it.
A lot from dubious sources, too.
Yeah. All right. I think we'll wrap it up there. So, Lions, if you're healthy and you don't smoke, you're probably fine.
We have to come to a final conclusion. Do we all?
All right. Let's do that.
So my thought was it was an accidental release because Chinese were testing. It was kind of a genetically modified as kind of a lab rat for testing of potential vaccines for future coronaviruses that accidentally escaped a BS, whatever you call it, 4 lab, but that actually is not a BSL-4 lab. So that's my theory.
What do you mean? It's not actually a BSL-4 lab?
It's not as...
it's
not by U.S. standards.
It's not up to snuff to Rico standards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's what I think happened. I think they were doing some kind of research and shit got out, and this is dangerous kind of shit to do, and that's what happens.
JB?
Okay, so I'm not going to lie and say that China's only BSL-4 lab being in Wuhan is kind of suspicious, you know?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
I would be a liar to say that that's not kind of suspicious. But I still think the like the levels of human like arrogance and stupidity that it would take to try to engineer a pathogen to kill more people.
But you know that they do data function research.
Yes, they also do. There was at least one lab that did it, and I'm pretty sure that the Chinese came down on them, maybe for actually releasing the information. I don't know.
So maybe they weren't making it to kill more people, but to make it something like, what if there's one that's more
and so they could test out vaccines against this super contagious
so long and short of it, I can't say that this wasn't some type of accidental release of some virus that they've been working on engineering in some type of lab strain that might have escaped, because these things do happen, especially in China. However, I don't have that much evidence to say that it is, but either way, it doesn't really make much of a difference at this point because it's out and they're fighting it hard because it's killing them, and we should probably do the same. So it's kind of a moot point at this. I definitely don't think what I'm fairly confident of is that this is not out of like some type of malice or malicious intent that this happened. If it was an accident, or was it just a naturally occurring outbreak?
Yeah, I agree with you guys 100%. One last thing I saw today, apparently some Israeli scientists said they'll have a vaccine in a couple of weeks.
Bullshit.
Yeah, this is going to be harder to do than they're thinking.
Doesn't a normal vaccine take like 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
Yeah, and just to give you a little bit of perspective from the cellular biology level, from the time an immune cell takes an antigen to make a vaccine to the type antibodies start being produced is actually a couple of weeks for your cells to do it. So
And then you'd have to test. You'd have to test.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way.
So antibodies never make you better, because all antibodies can do is help you prevent you from getting sick again. When you get sick and you recover, if you've never had it before, antibodies did not help you. They take 2 to 3 weeks to develop.
So
Can I make a prediction real quick?
Yeah.
We're gonna know if this was if this was naturally occurring or something quite shady by who makes money on the vaccine, right?
So, yeah, but actually they're saying in China and Russia that the U.S. did this, that it was a U.S. bioweapon.
Yeah, that's what my house.
Of course, they would
says.
say that.
Yeah, I know.
They don't
I know.
like us.
I know.
If I was them, I would say it was us too.
I don't believe them. I just want people to know.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't refute that anyone has a quote unquote vaccine, because think about things. People rush things. Think about like experimental drugs. If you have some type of terminal pancreatic cancer, sometimes people will just throw something at an issue just because it's better than doing nothing.
Well, here's
what I can say for certain: this is not a validated vaccine, because that takes a long time.
Yeah, that's my last question.
If you're willing to take it,
if a vaccine comes out in less than a year, will you take it?
Yeah, me? No, I'll take my chances.
Me neither.
But if you're going to be terrified and like you want something, it's more than likely. I'll say from my experience, it more than likely won't hurt you. But the worst case scenario won't do shit.
I don't think this is something sinister, but if it were, the worst thing you'd probably do is take their vaccine.
I don't want to inject this shit into my body, whether it's a weekend or dead virus, whatever.
If it's an attenuated virus, which it probably wouldn't be, I would be skeptical. But if it's just like some viral proteins or something like that, then
I don't know what that means. So
attenuated virus. So there's different ways that you can make a vaccine. Either you can use specific proteins that the antibodies then make that the virus also makes, and it'll protect you. Or you can just give an attenuated virus, which is actually a live virus, but they knock out the genes that make it like really bad, essentially. Or you could just give an inactive virus so that it can't replicate, but you can still be in contact with the proteins that will then make the antibodies for it.
Guys, we've got a question from one of our participants, and I'm going to expand it, though. Their question was, degenerate gamblers, which contracts coronavirus first? I can expand it to all Lions Liberty. Who gets it first?
I would...
Mark.
I
would say Mark.
He's probably going to get it on this trip to Mexico.
He's the closest to China.
I didn't know JB had a cat. I'm confused.
Yeah, Mark's going to be getting on a plane pretty soon. I think Mark's first one to get it.
I think Mark's the unhealthiest person out of everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
I think he just leads a very unhealthy life.
But his hair is so shiny.
I don't think
how is that possible?
I don't think he eats enough vegetables. I don't think he gets quality sleep, and probably has too much random stuff in his lungs. So I'm gonna say Mark is the it's gonna be hard but on the bright side, Howie's learned to host a podcast, so
yeah,
do we really need him anymore?
So when you were talking about Mark, what the participant also said, pent up sexual frustration too.
Who is Queen Corona? I don't know who
Queen Corona, who are you? Let us know. Anyways, anything else before we sign off?
I would suggest switching to ayahuasca tea and not smoking anything for at least a couple of months.
Should we stop vaping? I don't know. I kind of feel like it might make it more a risk.
If I get sick, I will. Probably not, because I'm addicted to nicotine. If I wasn't addicted to nicotine, I probably wouldn't be vaping in the first place. So
you could get the patch.
Ayahuasca tea, I would say.
That sounds like a good recommendation just for a random Friday night.
Dr. Science will write you a script.
All right. Put it in the mail ASAP, please.
You can only cash it in Peru, though.
I go to CVS. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
He's like, I said CVS in Lima.
All right. Well.
All right, kids. I think we covered about enough as we can on this. So
good job to Howie for hosting.
We've got no official sign off in Conspiracy Corner, so
we don't.
All right.
All right. Screw
Later.
the government.
See
All
ya.
right.